Thank you, Scott. Well, good evening, everybody. It is 7 p.m. It is April 6, 2021. Welcome to the April 6th meeting of the Edina City Council. As we all know, for over the past year, we've been holding these meetings electronically. They comply with the governor's Stay Safe Minnesota order, and we're doing it to make sure that everybody is safe, all of our residents, our staff, council members. We're all participating from home or office. And before we begin, there's a few things that we have been covering in these virtual meetings. As you know, the city is committed to continuing to receive and hear your input on matters. We've been collecting public data through voicemail and a variety of engagement tools, including our engagement website, bettertogetheredina.org. It's important for all of you that are listening in that you know that all public hearing comments are read before we take action. You do not need to submit the same communication in a different way. All feedback is considered equally, regardless of the way in which it was submitted. Tonight, we've got two opportunities for you to provide comment via telephone. The first one is in community comment, and you'll be allowed to talk about anything that's not on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing. And I'm going to give you that phone number in a second to call in on. And then the second time you could call in is during a public hearing process that we have tonight. So if you want to call in for a community comment, we'll provide testimony for the public hearing matters that are on the agenda this evening. You can call 800-374-0221, 800-374-0221. The conference ID number is 9484864, 9484864. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Our city manager will be the timer. He'll let you know when you get on the 3-minute mark, and then you need to wrap up your comments so we treat everybody the same. And remember, if you have already provided information, you don't have to call in tonight. We'll take that information in the way that you brought it forward. So to make sure that residents have a chance to participate fully on these public hearing matters, now we're carrying them over for a period of time after the public hearing is held tonight. April 6th will be remaining, the record will remain open on public hearings until noon, Monday, April 12th. So you can leave a voicemail with your feedback. And here's the number for feedback, 952-826-0377 for your testimony with regard to any public hearing matter. Or you can send a comment with regard to a public hearing matter through the form online at bettertogetheredina.org. And so the other public hearing matter on liquor, potential liquor license issuance to Yummy Southdale, that will be decided tonight. So thanks for your patience as we work to conduct this hearing electronically. We've got almost 20 people working from different locations to make this possible, and we'll try to make sure that it runs as seamlessly as we can. So having provided that preliminary information, we'll now call the meeting to order. Clerk Allison, would you do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember Jackson.
Here.
Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Staunton.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Next matter is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a meeting agenda in front of us this evening. Is there anyone who wishes to modify the form of the meeting agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published and as shown.
So moved. Second.
Moves. Member Pierce seconds. The approval of the meeting agenda. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The form of meeting agenda as published is approved. Next, we'll move to community comment. And now is the time to hear from residents who would like to speak to the council about a matter which is not on the agenda tonight or scheduled for a future public hearing. Again, that number is 800-374-0221, conference ID 9484864. An operator will ask for your name and address. They'll put you in the queue. Director Bennerot will bring you into the in to talk to the council, you need to speak. You need to press *1, I think, to get to Director Benarott. So you'll be given three minutes to speak, just as a reminder. And City Manager Scott Neal will be timing you and letting you know if you run over the 3-minute mark. So, Director Benarott, do we have anybody waiting in the queue to speak with respect to the community comment portion of the agenda?
Good evening, Mayor Hovland and members of the council. Currently at 7:06, I have no one on the line yet. Because there is a slight delay with the broadcast, I would recommend we may wait a minute or so before moving on. My clock still shows it at 7:06, so I'll come back to you at 7:07 or when we have a speaker, whichever comes first.
Thank you, Director Benarott.
.07, and I still don't have any callers, so I think you can move forward with the agenda at this point.
Very good, thank you. I don't believe we had any community comment last meeting. Nonetheless, our practice is to have the city manager respond to any questions that were raised by community members from the prior meeting. Manager Neal, anything to respond to from last?
Nothing to
from our last
respond to. We didn't have any community commenters at the last meeting.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Your Honor?
Yes.
It's not often my role to take things off of the consent agenda, but I need to tonight. Item G is a request for purchase fiber optic installation to water treatment plant 3. We thought we had all of our I's dotted and T's crossed with Logis, but we don't. So we're asking that item to be removed from tonight's consent and tabled until it's ready to go.
All right. Very good. Anything else from any other council member? All right. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda and all the items in Roman numeral 6 with the exception of 6G?
So moved.
Member Jackson moves.
Second.
Member Pierce seconds. The approval of the consent agenda with the elimination of 6G. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Item 6G has been removed therefrom and will be brought back to us at a subsequent date. Next, we're on to special recognitions and presentations. We've got our Hennepin County Commissioner, Chris Lyondras, with us today, but we got a couple of proclamations to take care of first on the agenda. And the proclamation that's first in line is the National Public Health Week, April 5th through the 11th, 2021. And that proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the week of April 5th through the 11th, 2021 is National Public Health Week, and the theme is Building Bridges to Better Health. And whereas since 1995, the American Public Health Association, through its sponsorship of National Public Health Week, has educated the public, policymakers, and public health professionals about issues important to improving the public's health. And whereas U.S. life expectancy dropped from 2014 to 2017 in the longest sustained decline since the Great Recession, and only in 2018 began to increase again. Further studies consistently show the United States has a lower life expectancy than comparable countries. And whereas there is a significant difference in health status, such as obesity, poor mental health, and drug use among people living in rural areas compared to people living in urban areas, and this variance increases because rural residents are often more likely to face social determinants that negatively impact health, such as poverty, transportation barriers, and lack of economic opportunity. And whereas public health professionals help communities prevent, prepare for, withstand, and recover from the impact of a full range of health threats, including disease outbreaks such as COVID-19, measles, natural disasters, and disasters caused by human activity. And whereas public health action, together with scientific and technological advances, has played a major role in reducing and in some cases eliminating the spread of infectious disease and in establishing today's disease surveillance and control systems. And whereas 6 in 10 U.S. adults have a chronic disease and 4 in 10 have 2 or more, and health risks such as alcoholism, obesity, and tobacco use are the primary reason for 7 of every 10 deaths annually in the United States. And whereas the COVID-19 pandemic has illuminated and has exacerbated racial inequities, and a growing number of local, state governments, and public health leaders have declared racism a public health crisis. Now, therefore, I, James B. Hovland, Mayor of Edina, by virtue of the authority vested in me by the laws of the Minnesota, laws of the City of Edina, Minnesota, do hereby proclaim the week of April 5th through the 11th, 2021 as National Public Health Week in the City of Edina, and call upon the people of Edina, Minnesota to observe this week by helping our friends, family members, neighbors, coworkers, and leaders to better understand the value of public health and supporting great opportunities to adopt preventative lifestyle habits in light of this year's theme, Building Bridges to Better Health. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation as stated?
So moved.
Member Jackson
Second.
moves. Member Pierce seconds. The adoption of the proclamation involving National Public Health Week, April 5th through the 11th, 2021. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The proclamation is adopted. April 5th through the 11th, 2021 is hereby proclaimed in Edina to be National Public Health Week. We have Jeff Brown, our Community Health Administrator, with us this evening to accept the proclamation. Mr. Brown, do you have some remarks that you'd wish to make?
Just a couple sentences. Thanks, Mayor Hovland, for the reading the proclamation, and I know our City of Edina Public Health Division staff, and as well as our partners with Bloomington Public Health, really appreciate the recognition. I will say, the last 13 months in the public health arena have just been quite a thing. Public health professionals generally are not used to being in the spotlight, and COVID-19 has certainly put public health front and center. We have been fortunate, speaking of building bridges, our collaboration between our 3 cities, Bloomington, Edina, and Richfield, we've had this in place since 1977, and the pandemic has really emphasized the benefit of that, the collaboration between the 3 cities. So thanks again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Brown? I think, Mr. Brown, we're all concerned about the folks that you work with in the public health sector, worry about their mental health, all the stress they've been under for over the past year. There are frontline folks, but then there are those unsung heroes like you're working with at Bloomington Public Health or down at Hennepin County that are doing all of this work. Have you seen an uptick in providing mental health services for the people in your profession?
That is something that's talked about frequently. I know it's a constant emphasis for people to take, have self-care and for, to take breaks. With our collaboration between our 3 cities, it's one of the things I constantly ask our colleagues in Bloomington about, because the public health nurses and the staff at Bloomington were kind of the initial, whether it was testing or our vaccine clinic at Bloomington Civic Plaza, they were running those and operating those. And we tried to get Edina and Richfield staff to help where we could. And we've begun doing that in these last few weeks or maybe month. And so we've been able to spell some of those folks that have been kind of working, not 24/7, but what felt like 24/7 to them, I'm sure. So it's been great. We've had staff, volunteer just in, check-in and registration and directing traffic. And we've had some of our paramedics and EMTs actually giving vaccines. So we've had a good response from our staff as well.
All right. And are you familiar with the mental health professional that we hired with the Richfield Police Department to assist on calls in the general population?
Yes.
Could you comment on that person's workload and whether that seems like it was an appropriate sort of hire for us?
You know, we haven't had a lot of interaction related to the pandemic. I think most of her interaction has been related to police calls. We've had a few, I guess it could be indirectly related to the pandemic. Some when we get calls about someone being isolated at home and maybe not being able to care for themselves. Normally we have one of my staff that goes out and looks at the conditions, along with which could be a public health nurse from Bloomington, but sometimes they're really busy, especially now. And now our social worker, mental health worker, has been accompanying on those visits. So that's been a good addition to our response in those cases.
Good, thank you. Did that prompt any other comments or questions from my colleagues? Member Staunton?
Just wondering, Jeff, if you can give us any update on the status of the vaccination outreach work that we've talked about with some of the communities in our city who may have a harder time getting access?
Yeah, it continues in many ways. We're constantly looking for those connections. You know, I know Richfield and Edina, we're both kind of keeping lists of people that would prefer kind of a mobile response. Which actually this week is happening for the first time in Bloomington at Dar al-Farouk Mosque in Bloomington. There's a mobile event happening. So it's kind of our pilot on getting off-site away from Bloomington Civic Plaza. So we'll see how that goes, and then hopefully be able to do that more in the future and get into a physical location that's easier for those folks to access.
Do we have any sense in a dashboard kind of way about the progress within our community? I know I see these at a state level, and I assume that our commissioner may be able to give us some updates at a county level, but do we know at the city level how we're doing?
You mean like vaccination percentage?
Yeah.
I don't off the top of my head. I think I can find that out, but I don't know that right off the top of my head.
It'd just be interesting to, you know, I know we've done a great job with the dashboard on the COVID cases and the hospitalizations and the ICUs, et cetera, but it'd be great to get some vaccination percentages in that dashboard portal as well.
Sure.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot, just trying to get an update. And
no, I can't reel that one in.
No, I totally get it. You got a lot going on. Thanks.
It did cause me to think about whether we've seen an uptick in COVID cases in Edina since school went back to full time.
Yeah, recently, I mean, we're similar to what's going on around the country among our students, our student age group, under 19 age group, and basically the 40 to 49 and 50 to 59 age group. Or no, 30 to, yeah, that's the right age group. So basically students and their parents is kind of how that kind of feels, I guess. There is an uptick in cases in those areas. The other age groups, kind of that 20 to 29, or in your 30s, and then older, it's kind of flat. So that's kind of where we're seeing case growth.
Thank you. Other comments, inquiries from council members, or even our commissioner? If you wanted to ask him a question, go ahead. All right. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the good work you're doing for the city of Edina and all of its residents. Really appreciate it. All right. We've got one more proclamation, then we're going to move on to our county commissioner for his update. Proclamation involves National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week. And that is for the period Sunday, April 11th through the 17th of April 2021, and that proclamation reads as follows. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, or emergency medical services, and whereas when an emergency occurs, the prompt response of police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. And whereas the safety of our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone or text the Edina Police Fire Communications Center. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first and most critical contact our citizens have with emergency services. And whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single most vital link for our police officers, firefighters, and paramedics by monitoring their activities by radio, providing them information and ensuring their safety. And whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Edina Police Fire Communications Center have contributed substantially to the apprehension of the criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. And whereas each public safety telecommunicator has exhibited compassion, understanding, and professionalism during the performance of their job in the past year. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of Edina does hereby proclaim the week of April 7th through April 17, 2021 as National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week in the City of Edina, Minnesota, in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and citizens safe. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation as stated?
So moved.
Second.
Member Pierce moves, Member Staunton seconds the adoption of the National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week proclamation. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The proclamation is adopted. It's a pleasure tonight to have Janelle Harris, our dispatch supervisor, with us to accept the proclamation and tell us a little bit about some of the work they've been doing that's been so difficult over the past year. So, Ms. Harris, welcome, and really appreciate you being with us this evening and look forward to your comments.
So thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hovland, council members, City Manager Neal. As supervisor of the 911 Dispatch Center, I would like to thank you for the proclamation recognizing the work of our 911 dispatchers during National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week. This past year, our 911 dispatchers, who are often recognized as the first responders, received approximately 113,000 incoming phone calls for service, both emergent and non-emergent. These calls fall in the range of accidental misdials all the way to the most serious of emergencies like shootings and structure fires and cardiac arrests, including assisting in the successful resuscitation of our own recently retired Richfield Fire Chief. Every day, our dispatchers are making life-saving decisions within seconds. To paint a picture of a typical shift, our 911 center will staff about 2 to 3 dispatchers at a time who work at consoles composed of about 5 monitors, fed from 4 computers, running more than 10 software systems at any time. The person sitting at the controls must know how to operate all the numerous technology networks, which is an elaborate multi-line telephone system, a statewide shared radio system, a local computer-aided dispatch system, and multiple record management systems, along with dozens of auxiliary components. In our highly technical environment, not one of these systems stays the same for long, which makes our dispatchers skilled change agents. So our dispatchers are trained to perform heroic acts over the telephone with quick recognition, specialized instruction, persistence, and empathy, committing to protect the personal safety and property of those in the community. And by doing this, they do face challenges of physical and emotional stressors every day. On top of our usual demands, 2020 obviously provided greater challenges to work through, from a global pandemic to civil unrest. And even while the world was changing, one thing remained the same, and that was the dedication and professionalism of our 911 dispatchers. So I hope I've conveyed how hard these essential employees work to maintain our high customer service and public safety standards. I am so proud of their dedication, their compassion, and their service. And I'm very grateful for this leadership's recognition of the same qualities. So thank you again. It's very meaningful recognition, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Supervisor Harris. Questions for Supervisor Harris? I think maybe before we go into questions, I think Chief Nelson and I'm guessing City Manager Neal have a few comments that they'd like to make about our dispatch service as well. Chief Nelson?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I just want to thank all of you for adopting the proclamation and a sincere thank you to all of our 911 dispatchers and the excellent job they perform on a daily basis. Janelle painted a very good picture of what goes on inside a dispatch, and it's amazing to watch them in action.
Yeah, it certainly is. Thank you, Chief. Manager Neal? That's
Yeah,
usually your
it is.
stop. That's usually your stop after every city council meeting. Well, we're meeting virtually now, although I see you're in your office, so.
Yeah, they're trained city manager therapists as well as everything else they do. But it's been hard. It's been hard for me. This isn't about me, but it's been hard this year because we've been trying to keep people that don't need to be in the dispatch center out of the dispatch center, because while you can afford to have the city manager homesick for a week, it's a problem when we have too many dispatchers homesick for a week. So we want to keep them well and keep people's germs out of their workplace. So I haven't been to see them very often lately, and I miss that because it's a work group that I really enjoy working with, because they really are on the very front line of first responding, and it's amazing to watch them work.
Good. Yeah, Member Jackson.
Yes, I have a question. Our dispatch center serves more than just Edina, doesn't it?
Yes, that's correct. We serve Edina and Richfield.
Okay, terrific. So the great work extends beyond our borders, and just very thankful for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Other council members have questions or comments? All right, good. Supervisor Harris, thank you so much. We all of us that have wandered up there in the past from time to time know how critical the work is and what a wonderful job you do. So thank you so much, and thank you to your colleagues as well. Please let them know that we are thinking about them as well and the great job they do for the residents of the city of Edina and the city of Richfield.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. All right, I'm going to turn now to Scott Neal, our city manager, who is going to introduce our new county commissioner, relatively new. He's gotten in the swing of things, I think, very, very fast, which those of us that knew him before when he was running thought he would hit the ground running, and he indeed has. So, Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce our new commissioner, Chris Lyondras. Chris represents District 6, which includes a good portion of the west suburban area, mostly a lot of the smaller cities around the lakes, but also a little piece of Eden Prairie, Hopkins, Minnetonka, and of course, Edina. He currently serves as the chair of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority for the county and vice chair of the Regional Rail Authority and the Public Safety vice chair. He's a lifelong public servant. He served in the Obama administration at USAID and helped lead the Hopkins School District through the COVID-19 crisis as vice chair of the school board. And has grown national advocacy movements around hunger, human trafficking, and educational equity. He grew up and lives in Hopkins with his spouse Ashley, 2 boys, and their spirited French bulldog. It's my pleasure to introduce Chris Lyondras.
Scott Neal, what a pleasure. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen here really quickly, if you just indulge me a minute. Let's see. Did that pop through?
It did.
Terrific. Well, yeah, good evening, everyone. Obviously, want to start by thanking you, Mr. Mayor, and Scott, for inviting me to join tonight's meeting. Mayor, council, as my esteemed colleagues in local government, it truly is an honor to connect with you this evening. My name is Chris Lyondras, your newly elected commissioner for Hennepin County District 6. And this short update is designed to build on the practice of my predecessor, Jan Callison. She made it her goal to attend at least one council meeting per year in each of her 16 cities across District 6. And I'll let you do the math on that. That's a few council meetings, but I'm certainly going to keep it up. And I think it's important because local government really is built on strong partnerships. And I want to do everything that I can to keep the partnership between Hennepin County and the city of Edina strong for years to come. You know, there's no question in my mind that the painful events of this past year have tested us like never before. As Scott mentioned, before getting elected as commissioner, I served as vice chair of the Hopkins School Board through what has been a pretty tumultuous year. And I'd observe that leading in local government through this pandemic has often felt a little bit like Apollo 13. There's no manual for the ways that we've had to adapt to serve our residents through these challenging times. And I really am proud of the ways that cities like Edina have stepped up to meet the moment. You know, it's no surprise that more than ever, to me, that people are looking to nonpartisan local government, our school districts, our cities, and our counties, not only for a little extra help in hard times, but really to model the kind of leadership that I think they deserve from government, period. And in 2021, that leadership starts with perhaps the biggest challenge we've faced together in a long time, and that's our continued response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm particularly proud that Hennepin County has met this moment. We've combated the virus directly through testing and vaccinations, providing extra help to residents and small businesses, and rethinking how we serve our residents to best keep them safe. Early in the pandemic, about a year ago, in response to the growth of cases, we ramped up our testing capacity, and our public health staff was instrumental with testing in long-term care facilities. Our employees have been heavily involved in case investigations and contact tracing, supporting MDH efforts to track outbreaks. And we've also transitioned many of our services remotely. And just like our schools have had to figure out how to deliver distance learning, your county has been delivering distance human services. It's involved coordinating some pretty complex waivers at the state and federal level, often on very short time frames. And while I do hope that we'll be returning to these in-person services soon, we're also actively looking for opportunities to apply the lessons of the past year to really inform and offer clues about the future of our work. In addition to public health, Hennepin County has taken bold action to really invest in our residents directly at an unprecedented scale. As you all are familiar with, the CARES Act really has empowered our local governments like never before. It unlocked for Hennepin County $220 million to serve our residents, and we've put additional state and local dollars to work in some of the ways highlighted here, including through our emergency rental assistance and small business programs. And we're going to be able to double down on that through the American Rescue Plan. That's going to bring an additional $240 million to Hennepin that I would imagine, certainly how we've made these investments in the past year is really going to be our template for how we think about continuing to invest these dollars moving forward. And these programs really have put dollars directly into the hands of our residents at exactly the time they've needed them the most. So I'll touch on a couple of these briefly, just because of how they've directly benefited Edina residents. So since the beginning of the pandemic, I'll highlight our emergency rental assistance programs here. We've provided over $16 million in emergency rental assistance to more than 6,000 households across Hennepin. That includes 13 households in Edina that have received in excess of $42,000. Perhaps more significantly for Edina, we've invested more than $69 million in direct grants to our small businesses. The county's Housing and Redevelopment Authority, which I chair, is the vehicle that we use to get that aid to small businesses. For Edina, that's meant 229 grants totaling $2.58 million in funding dispersed to Edina small businesses over the first 5 rounds. And again, as I alluded to before, I'm certainly committed to seeing these supports, these vital supports for our small business continue as we look to the use of those American Rescue Plan dollars. As you know, I think I just think it's really important. So as a part of these HRA activities, I also wanted to highlight an exciting new initiative called Elevate Business Hennepin County. It's a partnership with the Minneapolis Regional Chamber of Commerce to really help support our small businesses through technical assistance, consulting, and educational programming. And though this has been a short-term effort, we're really looking to grow this partnership in the years ahead to figure out how Hennepin County can play a more hands-on role in providing some of this assistance to our small businesses as they think about growing, both surviving where they're at right now, but growing to the next level. And then finally, the Love Local initiative has been another way we've been trying to help. We worked with 11 business districts throughout the county, including 50th in France, and the HRA staff developed this campaign to encourage people to patronize and shop safely during the holiday season. which I experienced personally with my family down there at 50th and Grant. And finally, I wanted to touch on the Hennepin County Climate Action Plan. Over the past year, our staff has been preparing this document. It's involved conversations with our community across 20 different lines or departments across all 6 of our lines of business in Hennepin County to really set the stage for climate policy and action in Hennepin County moving forward. The plan is a comprehensive look at county policy in the context of our changing climate, and it really offers a roadmap for how we can play our part in mitigating the impacts of climate change in some of the ways that are listed here. I believe it's a strong statement that with themes that will guide the county in the years ahead, and I'd urge residents to go to visit hennepin.us/climate action to go take a look at that. And I'd also say if folks don't have anything going on a Thursday night, a really exciting opportunity, although maybe it's more of an opportunity to put yourself to sleep, just turn this on. I'll be joining the Edina Energy and Environment Commission and actually in partnership giving a little presentation, specifically doing a deeper dive on the climate action plan. I think the piece I'm most excited about is we have decided to center this plan from an emissions standpoint on net zero by 2050. Our initial draft of the plan included sort of doubling down on our current commitment, which is an 80% reduction by 2050. But after hearing more from the community, conferring more as a leadership team, we really thought that the best way to align our commitments with this moment was to center that plan on net zero. So finally, just before turning it back over to you, I just wanted to highlight a couple of my top priorities so you know where I'm coming from, and maybe we can find some intersections and ways to explore working together on these issues. Number one is housing. As mentioned, as the chair of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority, I really think it's critical we prioritize issues of housing security, homelessness, that really address this affordable housing crisis. And I know that these are issues that affect our communities throughout District 6 and the suburbs, and I'm really proud of the ways in particular that Edina has stepped up in some of these ways as well. Public safety, Vice Chair of the Public Safety Committee. I'm particularly interested in exploring the intersections between our emergency dispatch system, both at the call level and at the response level, with mental health services. I had an opportunity to do an EMS ride along a couple of weeks ago with your former fire chief, Marty Shear. And what was clear from that about 8 hours spent on the ground with him is just the high percentage of those calls that involve either an issue of addiction or mental health. And our systems need to adapt and grow and respond to meet these new realities. And finally, just around economic development and inclusive growth, I've mentioned supporting our small businesses. I would also like Hennepin County to play a greater leadership role in helping create contexts to better, imagine a path to launching and helping support our entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs of color, and thinking ahead and imagining a time when Minnesota launches its next Fortune 500 company, which has been since the 1970s since we last did that. So, finally, this dialogue is really a two-way street. So I'm curious to hear from you. What are some of the things that jump out? What are your priorities? And where do you see the greatest opportunities for partnership? And I just tee that up as an invitation for any questions you have or comments or thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner. Really well done presentation. I could start out asking you a question about Elevate Business Hennepin County. Is there some way that our chamber and our 50th and Friends Business Association can interact with Elevate Business Hennepin County and try to make sure that we're assisting our small business folks out here as much as we can?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would imagine that would be a great pathway for partnerships. So what I'm going to do is my staff members are on the call right now. Kyle Olson is my policy director. Jessica Oaxaca is my district director. I'm going to have us follow up and make a connection to Patricia Fitzgerald, who leads our economic development efforts and is on point for Elevate Business Hennepin County. And we can certainly talk about what it would look like to explore further collaboration, or at least making sure that small businesses in Edina are aware of these resources that are available to them.
Yeah, I think we'd love to figure out how to partner with you in some form or fashion. So on that. And then your net, and also I think Member Jackson will probably touch on this, but the net zero 2050 idea on your climate action plan, we'd like to be doing something in partnership with you too and be consistent with between the county and our city in particular. So that might be something else for us to be mindful of. And thank you for meeting with our Energy and Environment Commission folks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I shouldn't have made light of that. For me, it's not going to put me to sleep because I'm thrilled about the leadership that our cities are taking on, our county is taking on. And to your point, Mr. Mayor, it really is going to require, we can talk about net zero Hennepin County, both in terms of Hennepin County making the investments to reduce Hennepin County government's proper footprint. But if we're going to see net zero county-wide, it's going to take the private sector, cities, school districts, counties, working together to get that done. And I think that starts with conversations like the one that we're going to be having on Thursday. And I think Edina is actually poised to play a significant leadership role in that effort, as you already do, as one of our municipal leaders on climate.
We'd love to do that. Thank you. Member Jackson?
Yes, thank you. So I do have a number of environmental questions. The first one that jumped out at me was when you listed your priorities, I did not see environmental justice on that list. I think this is something that really needs to be a focus at the Hennepin County level. There's only so much we can do here in Edina, but we certainly want to partner with other communities to make sure that we have that impact in mind in our activities. So I'd encourage you, I don't know how much that's set in stone, but I'd really like to see that a higher priority at the Hennepin County level. So I know because it's a big priority here in Edina. So that's just a comment, I guess. And I don't know if you have any response about what you're looking at for environmental justice.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. And I should make clear that last slide there on priorities, those don't represent Hennepin County's priorities from top to bottom. Specifically, where our office is focusing a lion's share of our time based on the committee assignments and work that we're going to be doing, we're really zeroing in on those. That said, and one of the reasons I highlighted the climate action plan, basically all of our environmental work in Hennepin County sits under our public works department. It includes, environmental cleanup grants. And, we just had another, a huge round of environmental grants that went out. And we center environmental justice in all that we do and how we score and evaluate the kind of programs that are going to get these grants in the first place. I encourage you to take a look at the climate action plan itself. It focuses strongly on disparity reduction and environmental justice as a significant theme and frame for how we're thinking about the work.
Excellent. Thank you. The other question I had was just sort of the intersections of housing and environmental support. And there are opportunities with environmental or with affordable housing to use some of those environmental things. We were talking, I believe, about there's a project or a environmental or all these vowels, affordable housing project that's a passive house that's being built in Minneapolis. And those are kind of opportunities to marry those issues together. I really think that's exciting, and I hope that that's part of your priority as well.
Yeah, absolutely, unequivocally. And I should say that I'm just starting to try to figure out how to get smart myself on that, exactly the intersection that you mentioned: housing, climate, environmental justice. I had a friend of mine just send me a book. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's specifically on that topic. But any resources and ideas that you have, council member, I'm all ears. I'd love to learn from you.
Excellent, thank you. And then the final thing is I just wanted to say how much we enjoyed working with Hennepin County on our benchmarking ordinance. And I'm looking forward to the partnership in the climate action plan as well. That's great. So thank you so much.
Terrific.
Member Staunton, Member Pierce, anything? Member Pierce?
I just had one question and then a comment. In your top priorities, you reference an inclusive opportunity ladder. Could you speak a little bit more about what that is?
Yeah, traditionally, Hennepin County has been, as Minnesota's second largest government and really one of our largest safety net providers, has primarily structured our investments and programs around helping people who are experiencing crisis of some sort and targeting our investments in that way. And as we all know, we need those basic safety net supports. But I want to see the county play a greater role as we look ahead to the future. And number one, just from a human services standpoint, think more about how we go upstream and make investments before people experience crisis. But part of that is making sure that people have the kind of economic opportunity and vitality, whether that's through a job, whether that's through starting a business, that enables them to, ultimately lift themselves out of poverty and off of public assistance. It's one of the reasons why this past week, Hennepin County took the action of raising our own minimum wage for county workers to $20 an hour. We have, as part of our workforce work, this Pathways program where we have a lot of county involved residents who actually enter Hennepin County's workforce at sort of the bottom rung of our jobs. And what we figured out is that if we move them from $15 an hour to $20 an hour, just give them that dignity of a living income, it actually moves them above the threshold and helps them get on the other side of the benefits cliff that often lower income residents experience. So that's really what I'm talking about there. But specifically, I'm thinking from a disparity reduction and racial justice and equity lens of how we make sure that we're really doing that economic development opportunity work in our BIPOC communities, wealth building, et cetera.
No, that's excellent. The comment I was going to make actually covers a lot of what you just explained. From the county perspective, I do think that we could do a lot more in helping people understand what it truly means to help communities start to build equity and what the downstream impact of that is. And so what I didn't see in your presentation, and I understand now that there's more in-depth material, but I think the more that we can kind of infuse that when we talk to the community, I think people will get a better understanding of what we think really helps, and then B, how corporations and other nonprofit organizations can start to think differently about how to solve some of these challenges. And eventually, right, the outcome is that it's better for everyone. And I heard a lot of that in your response to my question. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. Government can't do it alone. And part of my experience in the Obama administration on Feed the Future, it was an initiative where the federal government sort of identified a global development priority. We wanted to help, feed people around the world. But we knew in order to do that, we really had to develop these agricultural economies. And we could sort of express a goal and put some money on the table. But it was really, trying to bring the private sector on board in alignment and partnership with that effort that allowed us to move the ball forward on that. And so I'm thinking very similarly about this work. But we should continue that conversation because I think there's a lot of opportunities to partner with the private sector on this one.
Thank you, Member Pierce. Member Staunton, anything?
Nothing for me. Thank you, Commissioner. We're looking forward to working together.
All right, good. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for being with us this evening. It was great to have you around. The Edina City Council, see all the enthusiasm, the ability in you, and I can tell that you love your job already, and that it was the right thing for you to be doing. It was the right time to do this, to make this move to be a county commissioner, and you're going to be real good at it. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Council.
See you soon. Thanks for being here. All right, we've got two public hearings tonight, and I mentioned in my introductory remarks, the first one involves a request for a new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor license for Yummy Southdale. I think they've got other facilities around the metro area, and I always hear folks talk about how much they love to go to Yummy. So it's nice to have them coming to Edina, and I think we're going to deal with this matter this evening. We're not going to hold this over until the meeting on the 20th of April. Clerk Allison has this matter to walk us through it from a staff standpoint, so I'm going to turn it over now to Clerk Sharon Allison to give us an update and a background report on this matter. Clerk Allison?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Yumi Southdale, a Japanese cuisine restaurant located at 200 Southdale Center, Suite 2C, is seeking approval for an on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor license. Background investigation of the two owners was conducted by Lieutenant Conboy, and they were found to be in good standing. The matter is before you tonight for approval because per our liquor license ordinance, the council is required to hold a public hearing before approving a new liquor license. And as you've stated, Mr. Mayor, I'm requesting approval tonight instead of carrying it over to April 20th. And with that, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Clerk Allison. It looks like the background investigation was clean. That's really important for all of us. No comments on Better Together Edina. And does anyone have any questions for Clerk Allison with regard to this proposed liquor license issuance? All right, is there a motion? We'll open the public hearing. We're going to open the public hearing now for public testimony. Again, if you want to call in to provide testimony in this matter, which we're going to deal with this evening, 800-374-0221 is the number. The conference ID is 948-4864, 948-4864. An operator will ask for your name and street address, and you'll get in the queue. You'll press *1 to speak. Director Benarott will bring you in front of the council. Director Benarott, do we have anybody in the queue?
Do not have anyone on the line or in the queue at this point. My clock shows that it's 7:52. Because there is a brief delay with the broadcast, I'd recommend we wait until about 7:53 before moving on in case people are trying to get through.
All right. While we're waiting for anyone that's on the line or coming on the line that wishes to testify, just a reminder that you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and our city manager will be the timer, and he'll let you know when your time is up. And then we need to have you wrap up your comments. And I don't know if we have anybody from Yumi or Yummy. I'm not sure quite how to pronounce it, but we'll check on that in a few minutes.
It's pronounced Yumi, Mr. Mayor, and no, we do not have a representative from them tonight.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking this would be a chance for them to talk about their new restaurant in Southdale. So we'll just have to go experience it for ourselves.
Clock shows that it's now 7:53 and we still have no callers. So I think you can safely move forward with the agenda.
All right. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Member Staunton moves.
Second.
Member Pierce seconds closing the public hearing in this matter on Yumi Southdale LLC. Excuse me. Any further discussion about closing the public hearing? Roll call, please. Clerk Allison, with respect to closing the public hearing.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The motions to close the public hearing is approved. Is there now a motion from a council member to approve the issuance of the new on-sale intoxicating and Sunday sale liquor licenses for Yumi Southdale LLC?
So moved.
Member Jackson moves.
Second.
Member Staunton seconds the issuance of that liquor license to Yumi Southdale LLC. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The motion's approved. The liquor licenses will be issued. Did we have anybody come on the line, Director Benarott, from Yumi Southdale?
Did not.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to our last public hearing matter in this portion of the agenda. And Director Milner has this matter. It involves Melody Lake A and B, Grandview A, Birchcrest C, neighborhood roadway reconstruction improvement that we've been talking about for some time. It's embodied in BA 457. Director Milner.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this is to clean up a little housekeeping on this project. The big discussion will be on April 20th. So we are having a public hearing tonight for these addresses listed, 5100 to 5113 Grove Street in the Melody Lake project. So the reason we're doing that is because we had the overall public hearing on December 7th, 2020. All the properties within this project area map that you see received the notice, but the addresses listed, 5100 to 5113, were not listed on that notice. So at the direction of our city attorney, we thought we better have a public hearing just to clean up that paperwork to meet all the statutes related to Chapter 426 with special assessments. So we're conducting this public hearing tonight for those addresses. And here's what happened. Here's the notice that went out. You can see the addresses highlighted in the green box on the left. It says 5114 to 5213. It should have said 5100 to 5213. So we've mailed a notice to these affected properties. We did the public hearing ad in the paper again to meet all the requirements. We also wrote a letter to these residents stating that we would not present all the information again. If you recall, that's about a 40-minute presentation in December, but we did offer to answer any questions that they would have. We offered them to visit the project website or view the December 7th or December 15th video and then contact staff with any questions. So if you recall the recommendations from that December meeting, there was project cost concerns that we'll talk about at the next council meeting. We did open bids for Melody Lake and got real favorable bids, and we'll review those numbers with the council next council meeting. The decisions on the sidewalks were all decided. Council directed staff to create those bid documents and receive bids. Like I mentioned, we did. We did not approve a preliminary assessment amount yet. We'll ask you to approve that on April 20th. And that's where we can bring back those better costs. And with that original public hearing and this one, we had that opportunity to delay that decision for up to 6 months from that initial hearing. And we would ask council to make a decision on both these on April 20th, the next council meeting. So I'd ask council tonight to continue this improvement hearing to noon, Monday, April 20th, or not 20th, Monday next week, and then consider the decision on the matter for April 20th city council meeting. So continue the hearing till noon on Monday, April 12th, and I'd be happy to stand for any questions on this one right now.
Thank you, Director Milner. That was a nice, concise explanation of what happened there with respect to these properties between 5100 and 5113 Grove Street. Is there anyone on the council that wishes to inquire of Director Milner with regard to this matter? Okay, let's open this up for public testimony and see if we have anybody that wants to testify regarding this matter that would, this housekeeping matter, as Director Milner characterizes it, that adds in the properties from 5100 to 5113 Grove Street to the overall project. Anyone on the line, Director Benarott?
No, unfortunately, I'm feeling very unpopular tonight.
All right.
My plot does show that it's-
Let me read that 800 number one more time. We'll see if we can get you.
Good.
All right. It's 800-374-0221 if anyone wishes to call in and testify regarding this matter. The conference ID is 948-4864. 948-4864. Operator will ask for your name and address. You'll press *1 to get in the queue, and then Director Benarott will bring you in to testify in front of the council. Director Benarott.
I still don't have any colors. I think we should wait until about 8:01 before moving on. That's a little over a minute at this point. So
All right.
I'll come back to you either with a color or at 8:01.
Thank you.
now 8:01 and I still don't have any callers, so I think you can move forward.
All right, thank you, Director Benarott. With respect to proposed neighborhood roadway reconstruction improvement BA 457, is there a motion to close the public hearing on this matter at noon on April 12th, 2021, and to continue the action on the same matter to the City Council meeting on April 20, 2021?
So moved.
Member Jackson moves.
Second.
Member Pierce seconds. Any further discussion with respect to the motion as stated?
Just one question, if I could.
Yes.
Just looking on Better Together, Edina, there's a number of comments on there, but they all look like they're from last December. Are you aware is anybody aware of any public comments that have been made since we've posted this edition?
Councilmember Stoughton will review all those comments, see if there was any new ones and bring those back for your feedback on.
Terrific. That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member Sutton. Good catch. All right. Roll call, please. Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The motion is approved. The public hearing on BA 457 will close on April 12th, 2021, and the matter will be continued to action before the council on April 20, 2021. All right, we're going to move on to reports and recommendations. That portion of the agenda has a couple of matters in it, and Director Milner has the first matter there, and that's the potential approval of revisions to the assessment policy, the street reconstruction assessment policy. Director Milner?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Tonight I bring forward a kind of the step one with a policy revision. I'll explain first a little bit of the schedule. If you recall, the task force, street funding task force, presented their final recommendations on March 2nd. The council had a retreat discussion on March 13th, and from that retreat, we learned that there was support for taking this first step in changing the policy, but there was much more discussion needed to do a final kind of long-term decision. So tonight I'm asking the council to update the assessment policy. It is a policy, so public hearing is not legally required to revise that policy. Like I mentioned, we'll come back on April 20th to decide on the assessments for Melody Lake. We're also going to recommend an award of that Melody Lake project. We open bids. If we take out subcuts and retaining walls, and with a 5% contingency, our preliminary assessment is around $17,200. And if we remove the contingency, we'll be close to $16,400. So we're down into numbers that are more reasonable. But tonight we wanted to talk about that adjustment. So if you recall the task force recommendations, they presented two funding options, and that discussion continues. But another one of the recommendations was to remove subcuts and public retaining walls from assessments immediately. Do that year one of any change. So that's the change I'm asking for tonight. That'd be step one. Remove those two items from assessments. It would take effect on the 2021 street reconstruction projects. The funds to finance this would be from refinancing of street reconstruction debt. That would cover these costs in 2021. This is not a long-term funding mechanism. It's only enough to cover this 1 year and maybe some other specific stuff. But there is funding to cover the walls and the subcuts for this year's projects. Step two would be a much bigger discussion, and that's how do we fund street funding into the future? It's really along the discussion of 2022 budget. I believe we really need a change of that policy this year before we start communicating on the 2022 projects. We need to tell them what their assessments may or may not be included in there. So we've scheduled a work session June 1st. We heard a lot of comments at the council retreat. We're going to come back with answer some of those questions of the council and have that discussion at that work session. And then later this summer, bring back another update to the assessment policy is my hope based on the discussion. So tonight in your packet, there's a track changes assessment policy that removes subcuts in public retaining walls. And that's what I'm asking the council to approve tonight. So I stand for any questions on this matter.
Thank you, Director Milner. With respect to the revisions you're requesting this evening to the assessment policy, would you speak to why or whether it's important that we address this issue this evening?
I would say it is important because it'd be a pretty awkward meeting at the next council meeting if we're gonna change the policy in one report and recommendation item, and then 5 minutes later, I'm gonna make a recommendation to award a contract, already assuming you're gonna make that change to the policy. If we delay this change, then we may have to delay the award. And recall that the Melody Lake project already asked for 2 years of projects be included into one construction year. They didn't want to have back-to-back summers of construction. So if we delay this anymore, our contractor was hoping to start tomorrow. He thought we were awarding tonight. We told him he most likely could start on the 21st, but he needs every day he can to complete all the work this year. So I really wouldn't want to delay it any longer. So I really feel like the order is assessment policy tweak tonight and award and assessment discussion on the 20th of April.
All right. Does any council member have any questions for Director Milner with regard to his proposal that we just endorsing really the work of the street funding task force, recommending we remove the subcuts and the public retaining walls from the special assessments that we assess against neighbors in a particular neighborhood that's being reconstructed? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the revisions to the assessment policy, removing the subcuts and public retaining walls from special assessments for the 2021 street reconstruction projects of Melody Lake and Creek Knoll?
So moved.
Second.
Member Staunton moves, Member Jackson seconds. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, with respect to the motion as stated. Clerk Allison.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. Motion's approved. The assessment policy will be modified as requested by staff and the street reconstruction task force. The street funding task force, I should say. The next one, I think, will be a real interesting conversation with Twyla Singh, our organic recycling coordinator. She's got some ideas for us, and I think that are going to be interesting to hear about. It's a request for purchase of organics recycling program supplies. And Ms. Singh, our coordinator, here you are. Would you care to address this matter with the council, please?
Yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm going to also share my screen with you. Everybody see that? Okay. So background on this, in 2020, late 2020, we were awarded a $326,000 grant from Hennepin County for organics recycling, specifically to increase participation and help with that program implementation. We got such a large grant because we're one of the first cities to be fully online with this type of program at curbside. And just a reminder that every city in the county will be required to at least offer this type of curbside program by January 1, 2022. So since we have been doing this for about 9 months now, and we have this grant that we need to use this year, I am proposing that we do a couple of things with those funds. And one of them is to purchase compost from the facility, which accepts our curbside organics and turns it into compost. That is the Minnewacan Sioux community in Shakopee. And that material would be then given to the residents of Edina for use in their gardens. So for example, the community gardens that we have over near Station 1, they would be getting compost for their garden plots. Also with like our Arbor Day program, and we would be giving the trees away with compost. And then every time we give the compost to the residents, we would be giving educational materials and promotion materials of the program and also of the uses and value of that. Additionally, we would like to purchase a year's worth of supplies for each household. So that's this Polybest program supplies purchase of $44,000 here. That would give each resident a roll of bags and a couple handle bags like we did when we rolled out the program. That's to help mitigate the costs of actually participating in the program at the household level. So that would also help our green industries here in the state because it's a local owned, minority owned business in Roseville, and that would help support their private business as well. And they, along with the Shakopee community, have been very helpful and integral to getting our program rolled out. So those two projects will help address two of the most frequently voiced issues that I hear on an everyday basis, multiple times a day, which is the cost of supplies as a program, and that the resident doesn't see value to them when they put their food scraps into these carts. So when they get that compost back, it's a tangible value item that they can use however they wish to. Additionally, a third tier of this is the remaining funds from the grant we would like to be used as a fee reduction. One of the other things we hear every day is that the cost of the program itself is just too much, so we would like to reduce the fee $1 per month for 12 months, starting possibly in June this year. So that would hit all three of these major concerns and hopefully increase our participation levels and readiness to participate in the program in Edina. And I will stand for questions on this.
Questions for Ms. Singh? Member Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really exciting, and it does address a lot of concerns. Thank you so much for your creativity in doing this. I don't see the farmers market listed as an opportunity. Can you talk about the interaction you have with the farmers market and whether that's something you're going to continue?
Yes, absolutely. So that would be one outlet for where we would be giving away the compost or the compost vouchers, depending on how we intend to distribute that, and also the supplies themselves. So for example, if we do the pumpkin smash event again this year, that would be another place where we would be giving away compost and supplies. And so it's just going to be every city event that we have, including the farmers market, where we will be present and pushing this program and all of these valuable tools for people to be able to use to participate in.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
I had a question. You mentioned participation. How do we actually measure participation in the program?
We measure that by cart set out rate by day of the week. So the Monday route, the Tuesday route, the Wednesday route, and we track every single household. Currently, we do that manually with one of those old school clickers, but I have to tell you that seems to be the most reliable technology out there right now. So we're going to continue doing that. And we've been doing that since day one. So we know exactly what our participation rates are. And we know which neighborhoods are not participating as much as others too.
Sure. Well, for what it's worth, I think I like the ideas that have been expressed here. I still think there's always going to be that set of residents that don't see value in it, and any amount of increase in operating costs is going to be too much. But I do think the way that you start to break that resistance is to show some value back to the community. And I think what you're proposing is an excellent start of being able to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. And one of the nice things about this grant too is that we get it every year. Like we're not going to get $326,000 next year, but we might get another pool of money next year, which we could do, something that works from this well again. So that's the hope, is that, this isn't just like a one-time thing, that we have future opportunities here. And let's give it a shot now while we've got the funds and the time to do it.
Good. Other questions for Ms. Singh? It's nice to have you with us this evening. We
Thanks for having me.
we don't get to see you often enough, so it was a pleasure to have you here. All right, is there a motion to approve the request of our organics recycling coordinator for purchase of compost and organics recycling supplies for residents from the Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux community for $107,000? Member Pierce?
Yep, so moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Member Jackson seconds. I wasn't sure if Member Pierce was going to go for the whole 300 and some thousand. All right. We got a motion and a second with respect to the motion as stated. Any further conversation? Roll call, please. Clerk Allison, with respect to the motion as stated.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The motion's approved. Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
good. Look forward to the next stage of this. All right. We are now on to Commission correspondence, aviation noise update. I did not get anything from former Mayor Brindle. Did you get anything?
I did not.
Manager Neal?
I did not.
Okay. And mayor and council comments. Member Pierce, do you want to start us out?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had two things. One was just a follow-up question. We talked about a plan around how we would use the funding from the American Rescue Plan. And so I'm just curious where we are in terms of having that to come back from staff.
Yeah, good question. In fact, I think we now have a little bit better handle on how much that will be. So, Manager Neal?
Yeah, I can talk about that now if that's okay. It's as long as
Sure.
it's sure. We know that one of the questions that we were waiting to get a response from the federal government on is what census number will they use for Edina? You know, not all communities have growth or loss of population, but we have in the last 10 years since the last census that's been certified. So they're going to use our 2019 Met Council certified population, which is 52,000, a little over 52,000. And at about $100 per capita is what the estimate of the federal funds is going to be for our classification of city. So we're looking at right around 5.2 million is what we think it's going to be. We're supposed to get half of that in May. We're supposed to get the other half of that in first half should be delivered to us directly by the feds in May of this year, so next month. The second half should be delivered directly to us by the federal government by May of 2022, so next year. We are still learning the parameters about how we can spend the money, but the parameters we already know are much more permissive than the CARES Act funds and parameters that were surrounding that money. So there are a few things that are prohibitions. We can't use it to fund pension liabilities. We can't use it to defray a property tax increase. But really outside of that, it can be used for infrastructure. It can be used for pay. It can be used for operating costs, making grants, a lot of variation. The plan was to present our engagement proposal with the community to the council at the April 20th meeting. So our next council meeting later this month.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further, Member Pierce?
The last thing was just a comment. I thought the proclamations were really awesome, especially when we're able to highlight this, what I call this invisible net that supports the community. And you don't often think about these services until you've had to call one. And I personally have had to, not since we've been in Edina, but have had to make a 911 call when my middle daughter was unconscious because she had an allergic reaction to something. And in that moment, being able to call 911 and have a dispatcher send someone over, you don't really think about these things. And so I think, especially now in the pandemic with people working from home, to be able to highlight and recognize people for those, the staff for the services that they provide, I think that's an awesome touch. So thank you for that. And that's it.
Thank you. Member Jackson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also was really moved by the two proclamations. I want to call out on the public health. I hope that we continue to share information about COVID-19. And I love the idea of the vaccination outreach. And I'm so impressed with that effort. And I'd love to, hear, I don't think you can communicate that enough. I think it's really important to reach out to those folks who are less mobile and may not have an opportunity to get out and about as easily. So I'm really proud of us for doing that, and I'd like to share that as often as possible. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Jackson. Member Staunton?
Yeah, I would start by following up on that notion, and I don't know, Scott, if there's been any thought on some kind of a dashboard on the vaccination progress we're making in the community. I think, there's a lot of different places where you get in nationally in Hennepin County, but it'd be cool to see that. And I think that might help with some people who might be a little reluctant too, to see that so many of their neighbors are getting vaccinated. So
That's a great idea. I took a look at it while we were in our meeting, and it'd be easy for us to make that adaptation to have it's the same sort of structure that we use to record infections can be used to record vaccinations. So we'll talk to Bloomington Public Health about that tomorrow.
great. And that kind of feeds into my second point, which is starting to think about when we might return to being with each other in these meetings. And I think the vaccination is a big part of that. Obviously, we'll have to return once the governor lifts the emergency order, but, we might want to think about doing it before then if we feel like enough folks are vaccinated. And, I think about it in a few different layers. The first would be all of the members of the council and staff who have to attend these meetings. I would want to make sure that that was safe for them. And so if those folks were all vaccinated, then we'd probably be in a good place. And then secondly, members of the public, and just making sure that they're, aware at least of the risk if they're not vaccinated. And then that leads also to the discussion a little bit that we had at the retreat about, are we going to take advantage of some of the things we've learned in the pandemic in terms of providing opportunities for folks to participate remotely. I think it's been a real positive in that sense. And if we could continue to do that, that might help us get back to in-person meetings faster. It is with some reluctance that I encourage that, because the flexibility has been tremendous, but it is time, I think, for folks. I had a chance to go out and see some folks in a neighborhood this week, and golly, I felt like I had to polish off my interpersonal skills again. It had been so long since I've interacted with people in person. So I think it'd be good if we could get some information on vaccinations and reassure people who are participating that it'll be safe. It might be time. I say this because I have now had my second shot today. So I'm in the club, but I want to be sensitive to those folks who haven't had a chance to have a vaccination yet. And then that leads to my third point, which is I just wanted to confirm, and I did with Scott earlier tonight, we do have an HRA meeting this week. It is unusual that we have them the same week as the council, but being an expert in first, second, third, fourth, and fifth Mondays and Tuesdays, I know what happened, which is that the first Tuesday of the month is today, but the second Thursday of the month is this Thursday. So we are having the HRA meeting on the second Thursday of the month.
Right.
So for those who are not sure why that's happened, that's the rationale. So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know if Commissioner Latondras is still on the line. I see
No.
his name is up, but I was thinking
there he
about
is.
when he was
Yeah.
making his oh, here he is. When he was making his presentation, I was harkening back to a conversation I had with the county administrator, Dave Huff, on I think it was the 19th of March from my notes here. I thought it was really interesting that when you were commenting on the money spent and how they were allocated, that 227.5 million in CARES Act money, that in talking to Administrator Huff, he said that you had purchased 5 hotels and several other properties to help deal with homelessness. And I wanted to commend the county for that too, and thinking about how to deal with this tragic level of homelessness that we're dealing with. And I'm sure you've got more thoughts in mind along those lines as you think about how to spend that $270 million in a way that benefits the public. And it caused me to think about the 5.2 million that we're getting. We should be interacting carefully with you. You've got a lot more to deal with, but we'll have common interests, and we should be aligned on how we do things. So we're doing the best good we can do with the money that's available. And so I would encourage you to think about that as a kind of partnership as well. So thanks for hanging on the line here, so we could get back to you on that conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure. And if I might, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a real important opportunity for partnership, and we've been in a real fortunate position. I mean, I can't think of another time past, and I mean, hopefully not in the future, when so much money has flowed to local governments to figure out how to serve residents in smart ways. And, you know, one of the things that we've really been able to learn is how to use those dollars in a way that's not just one and done, though that's really important, but to really set ourselves up for future investments. And those hotels are going to become foundational for our single room occupancy strategy on the other side of the pandemic. And so I think I think we have a lot of opportunities to learn from each other as we think about how to leverage these resources to serve residents.
Good. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for hanging around. We're pleased that you were interested enough in what was going to happen that you stayed on the line. Appreciate
I figure if we were all meeting in person, I wouldn't be able to sneak out after my remarks, so that I better stick around for the virtual meeting as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that. I've got 2 other things to report out on. On the last day of March, U.S. Conference of Mayors had a Zoom conference with a guy named Dr. Frank Luntz, and I can't remember if I sent to Clerk Allison his PowerPoint. I've got to send it on to all of you, because the purpose of his conversation with us as a pollster, he likes working with the mayors because they're a nonpartisan group. And so he had a presentation around what he called the language dictionary for education. And it struck me as I listened to him that we've been operating in our lane with respect to the city responsibilities during the pandemic, and the school district has been operating in their lane. And usually, and Member Jackson and Member Pierce haven't experienced this yet, but usually we have I think a more effective sort of dialogue with the school district, and are trying to work in partnership as effectively as we can. We're going to get some money, they're going to get some money, but some of the things that Frank Luntz talked about were a bit distressing and caused me to think about the urgency of getting together with our colleagues on the school board. He said from all the polling they did, the frustration level with parents has reached the point where 74% of parents would send their kids to a different school if they could. And it just speaks to the difficulty and the challenges involved in operating in this uncharted territory. And it's a universal thing across the country. But 66% of the parents think education should be given some careful thought and figure out ways to make it more efficient on a going forward basis. He said most parents are really worried primarily about the grade school kids, the 8-year-olds, and the number one concern isn't the quality of their education; it's the socialization aspect of having the kids back in school. Those concerns outweigh the quality of the education. He said that parents want to lead with student learning. What do we want our kids to be learning, not what should teachers be teaching? At the end of the day, when he talked about what parents want, he suggested that for all of us, we should be thinking about getting together with our school board members and think about maybe having some town hall meetings as between the city and the school district on this issue of what parents want between now and the start of school, when we can get together safely and listen to stratify those conversations, so that you take parents that have kids in grade school, and you take parents that have kids in middle school, and you take parents that have kids in high school. He said he thinks it will really help tamp down the divisiveness that exists in communities. And I can see that now, where we've got a group of parents in our town that are more aggressive about getting kids. They were more aggressive about getting kids back into school earlier than they went back to school. Parents believe their kids have experienced trauma, and the virus really has been a more significant worry for them than unbalanced than the fact that their kids aren't in school. But nonetheless, there's a vast sort of dissatisfaction with what's happened from an educational standpoint. So to the extent that we should be helping or participating in that, and getting people comfortable about the idea that Edina will be going forward and being on the leading edge of things, whether it's educationally or from city government standpoint, we should be thinking about that. And then with respect to the American Jobs Plan, which is the rescue plan, the umbrella for that, I had a meeting on the 1st of April with the Standing Committee for the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and we had two of the staff people there from the U.S. DOT. I'll just give you a quick update on that. Two guys that I have met before, Charles Small, worked for Eric Garcetti in Los Angeles, and Maurice Henderson worked for the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler. Now they're part of the Buttigieg administration within the Department of Transportation, U.S. Department of Transportation. There's going to be some really interesting things happening around transportation equity. There's going to be $25 billion for transformational projects. There's going to be a goal of putting in spending $174 billion on EV charging stations, 500,000 EV charging stations in place by 2030. There'll be a focus around safety for local funding. I think we can expect to see surface transportation block grant funds coming directly probably to the MPO, which would be the Met Council, as opposed to going through MnDOT. There'll be some money that'll flow directly there for local benefits. So we're going to be thinking about that as well. And then what transportation looks like in the future. There was a data analytics company at the meeting, INRIX, and they were talking about the amount of congestion around the country, how it's diminished during the pandemic. In Minneapolis, the data was that there's 52% fewer trips into downtown Minneapolis, 25% fewer vehicle miles, vehicle trips in the region. In Washington, D.C., the congestion levels were down by 77%. So pre-pandemic, can you imagine having that conversation with somebody about what would it cost to reduce congestion by 77% in Washington, D.C.? It'd be unattainable. But here we are. And so we're going to have to think about, not only locally, we've got people in our planning commission working on parking regulations, but we'll need to be thinking this through locally and regionally as well, because it's not going to go back to the way it was. You know, more and more businesses are thinking, and Member Pierce could probably speak to this, because I'm sure his company's looked at this and looked at data from other companies about what percent of the workforce is going to go back to the office, what percent is going to be working from home. So we've got some interesting things to think about, and I think exciting to work on as we think about the post-pandemic city. How's it going to function? What's it going to be like? What's our land use going to be? What's our transportation system going to look like? So those are just a few of the things I want to just kind of plant as thoughts. And there's also, I think, one other important element of the transportation equity. There's going to be I'll call it a segment of money that's going to be dedicated to restorative infrastructure. So think about Rondo, the neighborhood in St. Paul, African-American neighborhood that was plowed through, a prosperous neighborhood with a great vital commercial component. plowed right through to build 94. It's never recovered. There'll be a special source of funding for restorative infrastructure projects, I think, like Rondo. So we want to stay on top of that as well. These two gentlemen said they would be happy to come to any metropolitan area, and I think at least the mayors in the area ought to be inviting them here so that way they can hear from local folks. So to the extent you think on the council about projects that we should be thinking about either regionally or locally, give that some consideration because I'm going to try to encourage regional council of mayors and in fact Minnesota mayors to welcome these two gentlemen to come to the Twin Cities to meet with us. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it to Manager Neal. We got some this testifying we are doing over at the legislature, as Member Jackson knows, is it's a journey of 1,000 miles. It feels like one little step at a time. And we got through another step in that process of on our local option sales tax. And I'll let Manager Neal report out on that. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I'll start with that item. It's an important milestone in our pursuit of a local option sales tax referendum. We are included, our referendum language is included in the House tax bill. It's House File 911, Article 9, Section 5. There's $39.3 million of projects, roughly split, not quite in half, but about 17 million for Fred Richards Park and the balance of 22 million or so for Braemar Park. The biggest expense category in Braemar Park are improvements to Braemar Arena. It's the one aspect of our proposal that did not make it into the bill is improvements, stormwater improvements and park improvements at Weber Park did not make it into the bill. So our two large park projects did, and they have been built into the House tax bill. So we are waiting to see what happens on the Senate side. It's not likely that our bill, our sales tax referendum will be in the Senate bill. I would say it's not very likely. So we are probably looking for something in conference committee. That's the most likely path for this to happen. And we'll keep you advised as that moves forward. But it is in the bill, and that's a big deal. Just a couple other things for me. One is I included the quarterly Q4 2020, the 2020 Q4 business report with the packet this past week. I would really invite you to take a look at that if you haven't had a chance to see it. It's your first look. It's of how we ended in 2020. 2020 was a funny year. You hear lots of comments across the country about there being two economies, and really that's largely true. We've seen it in cities too. There are some cities that prospered and some cities that didn't. We came through, with the exception of our recreation enterprises, which we have some ideas to talk about with the council when we get to budget season. We came through okay. I mean, we collected more money than we thought we were going to, and we spent less than we were going to spend, just because of the way that the pandemic impacted us. So, from a fiscal standpoint, we came through better than what we were expecting, and we were able to accrue some money for our budget stabilization fund as well. So take a look at that report when you can. We also need to have some volunteers tonight, one volunteer at a minimum and two at a maximum, that want to be involved in the interview process for the selection of our student commissioners. That process, which puts a student commissioner on each of our, sometimes two or three even, onto our boards and commissions. Applications for that program open in May. Interviews are in June. Appointments are made in July. We do orientation in August, and we have term starting for them in September. Jan Seidman, some of you may know Jan Seidman. Jan is a long-time member of our Human Rights and Relations Commission, former chair of that commission. She happens to also be an HR professional in her civilian life. She has helped us for 4, I think maybe 5 years through the process and sort of organizing it and guiding it. And she'd worked with a council member or two during that time. She's volunteered to assist us again. But we do need one, like I said, a minimum of one and a maximum of 2 council members that are interested in participating in that process.
So I would love to do it.
Member Jackson, thank you. I think when we've done it before, we've had one council member and Jan Seidman. So
That's right.
you want to do it as, you want to have somebody as an alternate in case Member Jackson can't do it for some reason?
That's fine. We'll work with that. It's hard to say, how it works from a timing standpoint, but it's hard to say how many applications we'll get. But really, if I think we've had the last year, I think Councilmember Anderson did it with Jan Seidman. So I think that'll work. That works just fine.
Okay, I'll back up Councilmember Jackson if you need it.
Okay. The final item, I want to go back to what Councilmember Staunton would raise of the question of meetings. So we have been, from a public standpoint, what we've been telling staff, what we've been telling the public is, at a minimum, when the governor retracts or lifts the state of emergency that allows us to meet in this kind of setting, we will have to go back unless there's some kind of statutory change. We will have to go back to live meetings. One of the elements of the meeting that we get the most feedback on of trying to blend into the future is the remote resident participation in public hearings and in other ways. There's been a lot of interest in doing that. So we are wanting to take a look at the technology that we could avail ourselves of to support that kind of feature in the council chambers. So we are working on that. Interestingly, one of the bigger challenges for going back to some kind of live or hybrid meeting is how we do this with our boards and commissions. Because it's the technology to support some kind of remote features in the council chambers is pretty good. We'll need to do some new things, but we could accommodate it there. To do that in the community room or to do it in some other kind of offsite meeting room setting is a little bit more challenging. So we're trying to look at that perspective as well. How do planning commission meetings will probably look a lot like planning commission meetings used to, but other meetings, park board, HPC, EEC, other kinds of boards and commission meetings, we're trying to work through some solutions for those groups too. And that's all I've got for tonight.
Okay.
If I can just chime in on that, Mr. Mayor. You may want to think about the dividing line being the kind of quasi-judicial actions. So the HPC and the Planning Commission, if they're having to evaluate applications, that'd be it'd be good to include them in the broadest spectrum we can in terms of public participation.
Agreed. So too.
Member Pierce?
Yeah, one of the concerns that I have, I think we need to be careful of how we think about going back into the chamber. And here's what I'm getting at. Even if when the governor eliminates the emergency order, I really think that we shouldn't be going back into the chamber just the way we were before. And so we still have to, in my opinion, be thinking about how do we keep each of us safe in the chambers? How do we keep residents and neighbors who want to attend a meeting, how do we keep them safe in the chamber? Because my biggest concern is that even though we're vaccinated, my wife and I are vaccinated, but I can promise you we don't feel safe in public And so we still wear our mask. We still reduce the amount of travel that we do. We still go to the grocery store at certain times because we know there's fewer people there. I think that's going to continue. And so I think the things that we're doing now to be safe in the midst of the pandemic, I think we should be considering continuing those things. And I'm talking about simple things like maybe the structure of the chamber needs to be different in terms of barriers, or maybe the air filtration needs to be different. Things like that, that not only would make us safer going back today, but in future, if something were to happen, we'd be better prepared for it. And that's what I think a lot of corporations are thinking about as well. What do they need? What changes need to be made so that we can be safer in the future? Not just thinking about returning back to the office because everybody's vaccinated.
Yep. Agreed.
And
Thank you.
I would echo that. I mean, we have a great opportunity when we return because it's an unusual opportunity to make some changes, and that will evaporate quickly once we settle into the old chairs, and so we ought to think hard about that. But having said that, the clock is ticking on our ability to put that off too. So.
Okay, very good. Other comments? Manager Neal, anything further?
Nothing further from me.
Manager Neal, would you send those Q4 reports out by separate email? I mean, I've got them bundled in my
Sure.
computer here, but to pull them out of there and try to copy them is a little bit more complicated. So,
Yep, we can do that.
thank you. All right. I think that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Member Jackson seconds. Adjournment of the council meeting for April 6th. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, with respect to adjournment. Clerk Allison?
Councilmember Jackson,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Staunton,
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. The virtual meeting of the Edina City Council for Tuesday, April 6, 2021 is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Just
Thank
to note that Clerk Allison was 2 minutes off of her estimate for the meeting. She's,
I will take that, Manager Neal.
It is
Not bad.
survival. That's the first thing I look at when I get to stage direction. Is when we're going to be done.
You were
She
under.
knows what she's doing.
Yeah, she was under. That's right. Yeah.